And there's Rizwan. Okay. Hey, Riz.
Hi, guys.
Okay, Travis has about 30 minutes, and John's probably about on the same timetable, so let's get moving here.
That's right.
Here we go. 3,
Rock and roll.
2, and 1.
Hello, everyone. This is Gene Aguilera, author of Latino Boxing in Southern California, and you're listening to the Ringside Boxing Show with Dennis Taylor and John Responti. My amigos.
Live from Monterey on California's beautiful Central Coast, this is the Ringside Boxing Show. I'm Dennis Taylor, welcoming you to join me and my expert analysts, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, and John J. Responti today and every week for the hottest, sweatiest show on the West Coast. And now, from Studio 1A, it's the Ringside Boxing Show.
Welcome to the Ringside Boxing Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm Dennis Taylor, and we've got some great stuff dead ahead for you guys today. Our featured guest is a guy who watched his older brother get shot and saw several friends get killed on the drug and gun-infested neighborhood where he grew up in the Watts section of Los Angeles. He found boxing, which helped him navigate through all of that, and actually didn't have his first amateur fight until he was 19 years old. Turned pro less than 2 years later. Brandon the Cannon Adams went on to win the 5th season of the Contender last November, and on June 29th, in his first fight since that TV series, he's going to be fighting undefeated Jermall Charlo in Houston for the WBC interim middleweight championship. This young man is a fantastic interview. Boy, he was a pleasant surprise for John and me, and he's a big personality, and he says we're all going to be calling him Brandon Ruiz, a nod, of course, to Andy Ruiz Jr. after he upset Charlo. So we'll see. We also welcome our British correspondent, Paul McLaughlin, back from his two-week holiday, as they say in England. He's got some interesting info today about the Joshua-Ruiz rematch, and he'll also update us on Callum Smith, who's angling toward a showdown with Canelo Alvarez. And we'll start off, as we do every week, with a conversation with our expert analyst. Travis Hartman is a professional boxer, trainer, and promoter from Osborne, Missouri. He is now living and training in Orlando, Florida. Rizwan Zahid, a boxing journalist from Toronto. And John J. Responti is chief lead writer for MaxBoxing.com and DogHouseBoxing.com. And John and I are co-authors of Intimate Warfare, the true story of the Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward boxing trilogy, which was an Amazon bestseller. And Travis, you're actually promoting a show on June 28th at Phil Welch Stadium in St. Joseph, Missouri. If I'm not mistaken, you're also fighting that night, aren't you?
Yes, sir. It's going to be my last fight back home and around my family and friends, since I live in Florida now. But I was born and raised, and I was born in St. Joe. Then I was raised about 20 miles east of there. So it's a nice little coming home party.
Yeah, give us some details of what people are going to see in St. Joe that night.
Yeah, I'm actually trying my best to bring on this women's boxing movement. So I actually made my women the main event for the night, even over myself, who I'm also the promoter. So I made the women the main event. It's Ashley Curry, and I'm trying to still sign her opponent. We should have her signed by actually tomorrow as well. I also have the Byron Pauly, who's fought one of the Morrison, I forget his Kinsey Morrison. He fought one of the Kinsey Morrison. Last fight. Yeah. He's been on HBO. He's fought a lot of the top heavyweights. He's fighting one of his last fights. I'm also having the comeback of Donnie McQuarrie, who, if you guys know, Donnie McQuarrie was on season 3 of the Contender and actually won a couple fights on there as well. And then, of course, I'm fighting on it, and we have another couple undercard fights as well. So it'll be a fun night. It's going to be it's actually Phil Welch Stadium is actually a minor league baseball team, so it's a stadium that they play in. So it's kind of cool. We put the ring over home plate, so it's a really cool atmosphere, and the place holds about 4,000 people, so it holds quite a bit of people.
Awesome,
I'll be very, very blessed if we can even feel close to that. But you never know, so we'll see. But we have some really action-packed fights. We actually have Donnie McQuarrie is going to fight a guy who upset Marcellus Wilder just 3 or 4 months ago. Yeah, so that's who Donnie McQuarrie is going to fight in his comeback fight. So we're going to have some actually really tough, good fights for a Midwest card. But it's a small card, but I'm working my butt off to match it really, really competitive, so the fans actually get a legit, true professional fight. And not to mention, I had a guy that fought on my card last year. His name was, last October, his name was Dakota Pauly, and his very next fight, he ended up fighting at Madison Square Garden on that top-ranked undercard, and he lost a very, very close competitive 6-round decision that could have easily went either way. So we have some top-notch guys that fight on my cards, and they go on to do other things as well. So I hope the fans definitely know that what they're coming to is going to be true professional boxing.
Hey, what about your undefeated little brother, Drew Hartman?
Yeah, he's going to set this one out. He's pretty busy with his company and his business right now, so he's not going to be in that one, but I'm sure that he'll be in attendance. But, yeah, my brother's still 10-0 undefeated middleweight right now, but he's taking a little bit of a breather from his fight last October.
Okay. So there really weren't any marquee fights this past weekend, but there was a marquee fighter in action. Gennady Golovkin returned to the ring at Madison Square Garden in his first fight since he suffered the only loss of his career last September against Canelo. Golovkin fought an undefeated Canadian named Steve Rolls, who was 19-0, and he knocked Rolls out in the 4th round in really typical Golovkin style. It was pretty brutal. So let's toss this one to the Canadian on our staff, Rizwan Zahid. Rolls is from your hometown, Toronto, Riz. Did you know much about him before the fight, and did you think he had any shot for an Andy Ruiz-style upset going into this thing, or did you expect Golovkin to do exactly what he did, make it a short night?
You know what, I seen that some people have said that Steve Rolls actually from Hamilton. I've heard some people say from Toronto, so Hamilton's about an hour outside of Toronto. But even within the Canadian boxing circle, to be honest, I had no idea who he was, and that's not an insult to him or anything like that, but I didn't know much about him. The last couple fights he's had has been in Toronto. And, I looked at his record. He hadn't really fought anyone, that knowable. I think Montreal's and Quebec's boxing scene is completely different. In the Toronto area, there's still guys that go out to Quebec and other things. But, yeah, I haven't really seen much of Rolls before this. And, he was a 35-year-old that got one of those guys who turned pro quite late, turned pro at 27. But that being said, he didn't look bad last night. I mean, he definitely showed flashes. He landed a lot of good shots on Golovkin, and I think the question is that does he look good or did Golovkin look bad? And I think it's a bit of both. I've been very vocal about how, to me, Golovkin has taken a step back pretty much with each fight in the last 4 years. And even though he's still one of the obviously top 5 in the division and all that, he's clearly lost a step. I saw him trying to show some head movement, actually. But, I mean, if Steve Rolls was able to land pretty comfortably on him, I don't really think that any other top middleweight will have any issues. But, obviously, Golovkin still has fundamentals. He still has brutal power, and he still knows how to finish guys. I mean, he was able to switch into a southpaw stance and throw an overhand left. And that, he landed a left hook that was similar to the one he landed against Rubio, except this was almost like a 12-6 angle, right? Like, I've never seen anyone throw a shot like that. Like, guys protect their temple. I've never seen a fighter go searching for a temple shot from that angle. But Golovkin's always been more than just a power puncher. I mean, those who watch the sport know that really well. But there's nothing about last night that told me, should he fight Canelo, would the results be any different than what I already thought, which was Golovkin is getting older and Canelo is still right in the middle of his prime. And I don't think it's going to be any different the third time around if they do fight indeed. It doesn't seem like De La Hoya is super inclined to make the third fight, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I guess the difference is now, with the DAZN deal they have, it's not, it's not like one fight's $20 million, the next one's $5 million, right? If there's kind of parity and equal distribution from fight to fight, then I guess is there less inclination to make a third fight? I would say so, right? I mean, if he can fight, I think and it goes both ways. Instead of, before it was like, well, guys like Demetrius Andrade, they don't move the needle at all. Well, it doesn't matter because you're still getting the same amount of money. And, it goes the other way. Well, we don't need to, we can fight Canelo or we can fight Golovkin, but it's going to be the same amount of money, right? So, and to be honest, I know a third fight would be entertaining, but to me, the result is just so, and I shouldn't say this after Ruiz upset last week, but the result is so set in stone that I thought, that I would think Canelo would would win rounds. And again, even though I think Golovkin won both fights, in the second fight he didn't look as fast, and third fight I think it's going to be the same thing. I mean, the guy's 37. He's not, he's not a spring chicken. But I think the issue is, who does Golovkin fight next? I think there's a lot of obviously middleweights around. DAZN obviously has a premium service, which is obviously doing really well. So there's, it seems like Demetrius Andrade could be a potential opponent for Canelo. There's also rumors of Callum Smith, but I can't see them taking on Callum Smith at super middleweight. Smith is a great fighter and he has size and everything else, so I can't see them. I can't see them doing that. But there's options there, and I think this is what the brilliance of DAZN, that the payment structure. Guys don't have to go looking for the quote unquote big money fight because it's their contract, right? Everything's a big money fight. You don't have to, and that's why, to some extent, I think it works. There's flaws and benefits of it. The benefit is that, you can take on the lesser fighters that are, that don't quote unquote sell, but people are still going to watch, right? Because they already have the subscription and all that. They don't have to pay a pay-per-view premium, all that. And the fighter's still going to get paid. So it's kind of a win-win in that regard. Obviously, you need the fighter willing to do that. The other side is they don't, if there's, they could theoretically take on lesser opponents because they know they're going to get paid the same amount, right? I mean, if you're like any other sport, if you, instead of taking on the Super Bowl champs, you can take on, the Cleveland Browns. Sorry to anyone who's a Cleveland Browns fan, but it's just the ability. You can take on the worst team and get paid the same amount. Wouldn't you just kind of doing that over and over and over again, right, and maintain your status? So it'll be interesting, and I think it's going to depend on fighter to fighter, but especially when you think of the longevity of these contracts. Why I think when I thought of it yesterday, I'm like, well, why wouldn't Canelo fight Golovkin? Now I think about it, why would he fight Golovkin? Because even though I think Golovkin would lose, he still has power, he still knows how to hurt guys, and theoretically, I mean, if you think of who's a bigger threat in some ways, I don't think Demetrius Andrade is necessarily a bigger threat than Golovkin is. And if you're Canelo, even if you lose to Demetrius Andrade, it'll probably be a close decision. You can get a rematch and knock him out, whatever, right? There's with Golovkin, though, you might get hurt, right? Even though I still think Canelo would win quite comfortably, there's not that risk with Andrade, and there's the same amount of money. And I think that's the unique structure that I now have with finances, and I think that's going to dictate a lot of the future matchups.
Yeah,
John, do you think Canelo? Do you think Canelo and Oscar want that third fight? We're reading conflicting reports here. Golovkin, all but guarantees that third fight with Canelo is going to happen in September, and De La Hoya insists that they're going to make Golovkin wait. And I'm wondering if that's just gamesmanship, or if they really don't give a crap about fighting Golovkin again.
I think it's somewhere in the middle, Dennis. I really think behind the scenes they don't really want to fight him that much again. I think, and it really annoys me to be really honest here, because when I was writing an article about Gennady Golovkin, I was thinking how unfair it had been to him in a way that he toiled for years in Europe as a guy that a lot of people didn't know, and then he came here and he made such a big splash. And there was talk of him fighting Canelo, 2015, and they wouldn't even take the fight then. They wouldn't even come near him. They wouldn't even get in the same state as Golovkin. I'm talking about Oscar and Canelo. They just waited until he got older when they thought they could beat him, and then they really didn't beat him anyway. And okay, maybe the second fight, that one's hard. I thought he won the first fight. So right now, let's say it's 1-1. But he's fighting an older Golovkin, and his wrist said so correctly. He's a step slower. He was trying to move his head, but he still got clocked with some pretty good shots. Canelo was watching it going, yeah, I can do that. I can do that better than Steve Rolls. So it's a tricky thing for Oscar in the sense that, but what I don't like, and this is just me being me, because I don't like it when people are assholes, and that's what I honestly think Oscar's being an asshole here. I think Golovkin deserves respect. I think Oscar is talking for Canelo. Canelo is still mad about what Golovkin said about him about steroids, and he's his promoter. I get that. So he's loyal. Okay, I get that. I feel that. But a third fight, back to your question, I really don't think they're that thrilled about it. I think they will eventually do it. if Eric Gomez and says, look, this is the best fight for us, and we can make a boatload, like Riz was saying, it's money is money. But also, it would be a hard fight for Canelo. Those two fights, you could debate them all day. They were tough fights. They were brutal fights. They were exciting fights. Canelo needed everything he's got at his prime to get a win, arguably, and a draw. So he'd win again, most likely. Again, I agree with Riz, but something could happen. So I think they're kind of, and then behind the scenes, like I said, they're like, well, we'll let him get older, which just drives me nuts. And again, that's why I said it. I just think it's unfair to Golovkin. He'll fight anybody. Golovkin is old school. He's a good guy. Nobody says anything bad about him. You know, we had Jonathan Banks on. Brandon Adams, our guest here in a few minutes, said what a great guy Golovkin is. Yeah. So it's unfortunate, but that's boxing, and, you know, I could cry all day about it. But, I mean, how frustrating would that be for Golovkin? I mean, this is a good one for Travis. I mean, how would you feel like you're thinking to yourself, man, buddy, I'm 37 now. When I was 32, 33, 34 even, I'd have kicked your butt. But he knows. You know he knows, even though he'll never admit it. He'll say, I'm a baby and all this. You know he knows that he's not what he was. Every athlete knows that. Everyone. So that has really got to be frustrating for an extremely competitive person like Golovkin. Because of all the boxers I've ever spoke with, I'm a very competitive person. They are the most competitive. So that has just got to be maddening for Golovkin.
What about that, Travis? Yeah. Golovkin gave himself high marks for this vicious knockout that he scored against Rolls on Saturday, and he said he felt like a new baby for his first fight with Jonathan Banks in the corner. Banks wanted to see GGG become busier and more relentless than he'd been under his previous trainer, who's Abel Sanchez, but they only had a short time to work together for this fight. Was there any noticeable difference in Golovkin on Saturday that you saw?
No, I don't think so. I think that we still saw a similar Triple G. I think what happens when you change trainers this late in your career, I think it just brings a new vibe. It brings a new upbeat. It brings just something fresh. I don't think that we're going to see a brand new something major change in Triple G because, to be honest, why would we change anything? Because all of us, we agreed that those two fights with Canelo were 100% competitive. He could have easily won the first one, and the second one I thought that Canelo did win, but you can make a case that Triple G won. So why would you change that? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I think that's why Jonathan Banks is a perfect guy and a perfect fit, because I don't think he's going to come in there and try to do this 180 and change Triple G up, because you don't need to. Triple G is still Triple G, and I was impressed with him. I really was. I know that he was supposed to beat Rolls, but the way he did it was the vintage Triple G. He did it in explosive knockout fashion, and knockouts is what brings the fans in, and that's what Triple G is still doing, which is, it's unheard of, and it's awesome at the same time, because like Riz was saying, that punch where he kind of did like a over the top, like chopping down on top of the head punch, and it was, as a boxer, I'm telling you, that hurts. It knocks your equilibrium off, but at the same time as it hurts to receive that punch, it also hurts to land that punch, because that's a hard part of your head. So when Triple G does that, that's risking hurting his hand as well. So hopefully he's picking more padded gloves to do that, because that's a tough punch to land on your knuckles as well. But overall, I think that it was a good performance by Triple G, and I'm actually on the fence. I think the fight's going to happen again with Canelo and Triple G, because for the simple reason is Canelo, all elite fighters, they have an ego. You have to. When you're in boxing, it's a singular sport. There's no team, essentially. It's just you out there. You have to have a little bit of an ego. And I think that Canelo has a lot of pride and a lot of an ego, and I still think there's a lot of people out there telling him that he didn't win that fight. So for that simple reason, whether Oscar wants to spout anything else out the mouth, at the end of the day, if Canelo wants that fight, Canelo's going to get that trilogy. And I think Canelo wants it, and I think he'll get it, because I think Canelo wants to prove that he's one of the best Mexican fighters of all time. And in order for him to prove that, by all means, this trilogy, it really should be 1-1. Even though I thought Canelo still edged the first one out, I am in the vast majority that thinks Canelo won that first one, because nobody thinks that he won the first one for sure. But I think he did. But most people can say that series should be 1-1. You know, Triple G winning the first one, Canelo winning the second one, so we should have a trilogy. And if Canelo is going to go down as one of the best Mexican fighters of all time, he's got to right that wrong, and he's got to win that third fight. And I think he knows that, and that's why I think this fight will happen. But I also want to talk real fast about last night with Triple G and Rawls. Everybody wants to talk about pay gap in professional sports. Well, the pay gap in professional boxing is sickening. Triple G walked away with close to $15 million last night, and Rawls pocketed a whopping $300,000. Tell me how that pay gap isn't massive. Don't get me wrong, $300,000 is nothing to sniff at. I would love to have a $300,000 payday. I've been boxing 15 years, and I've never came close to that. So I would love to even have that. But let's be honest, guys. $300,000 and the same opponent that he was fighting pocketed $15 million. It blows my mind when I see that pay gap. And I know Triple G earns that, but we got to have something to where these fighters are getting these opportunities and are getting well compensated, because Rawls is probably never going to get an opportunity like that again. So he deserves to make as much as he possibly can in that instance. And by all means, I know Rawls landed a bunch of clean punches, and I know Riz thinks that's because Triple G is kind of faded a little bit, but I don't think so. I think Rawls is a very athletic, very well-trained for this fight. He was super ready, and I think the guy has a lot of talent, and it's hard not to let a guy with that talent, that speed, and that fitness, that guy was in great shape. I think it was impossible for him not to land clean shots on anybody that he fought. He did really well for a fighter coming up for, that's obviously his biggest fight of his whole entire life, and probably the biggest fight he'll ever have, that was against Triple G last night. But I thought he put on a great performance, but at the end of the day, Triple G has real power. I don't think Triple G is slipping enough to really have a massive. I don't notice it that much. I think the average fan, there's no chance they're noticing that Triple G is slipping a little bit. But I do think guys like us, Riz, who watch boxing and have watched Triple G for a long time, I think we can tell just a little bit. Yes, there's a little bit of a slip, not huge and not massively noticeable to the average fan, but to us, I think he's slowing down just a little bit. But I think he's going to give Canelo a run for the money. If they fight for the third time, I 100% can see Triple G possibly coming away with a win. Anything can happen, and Triple G is that talented. He's got a new, fresh coach in his corner. I think that he can beat Canelo. Do I think he will? I will pick Canelo to win that fight, but I think Triple G 100% can win the fight. And for that reason, that's why I want to see it. I think it's an exciting fight. I think the third fight will be exciting, and I want to see it. I want to see Triple G and Canelo fight within the year. If it happens, I don't know. But if it happens at the end of this year, I will be super excited. I will give Canelo even more credit for taking that fight in such short of a notice period and not trying to stretch it out and watch Triple G get older, even though he kind of has already done that. But if he does it this year, I'll have massive respect for Canelo and Triple G, of course.
Riz, you're welcome to respond to anything Travis or John said there, but I also wanted to go back to you on these future opponents, options for Canelo. There's Charlo, there's Andrade, there's Callum Smith, there's Golovkin, Errol Spence, and I wanted to ask you which one with the politics of boxing is most likely to happen, and which ones are off the table?
I think, I'll respond to what Travis said first. Yeah, I agree. The pay gap is wide, but I'll tell you right now, Steve Rolls has never seen anywhere near that money in his life. I think any fight he probably had over here, because it's hard enough for Canadian fighters to get big fights just with the way a lot of outdated athletic commissions and all that work over here, outside of maybe Quebec. So Steve Rolls, honestly, I don't think he's ever pocketed more than 30 or 50K. That is still, $300,000 is still life-changing money. I understand there's taxes and he's got to pay other people, but I mean, he was fighting Golovkin. So, even though, yes, there is a pay gap. Hell, I mean, look, he was a 50-1 underdog, right? Just a little math here. If he's 3-1, and you do the math, $300,000 to $15 million, that's about a 45-1 ratio. So that's actually not too bad, believe it or not. And again, he was, this was a Golovkin comeback tune-up fight. And he's never fought, anywhere like that. Again, there's so many fighters who can't fight full time and can't train full time because they have to do the other jobs. And boxing, I think every sport has a certain amount of disparity, and boxing could they benefit from a sort of union the way the NBA PA and NFL PA and all that stuff have? Yeah, probably. But yesterday there's a UFC event and the champions are calling out and asking for more money. That doesn't happen in boxing, right? The champs are not saying we're not getting paid enough, right? So at least the guys who earn it and get to a certain level get paid. Because I'll tell you right now, Golovkin fought for a lot of, weak paychecks on his way up too. Golovkin was pretty much in obscurity up until his move to the States. So I honestly, I'm really happy for Steve Rolls for getting that money, because that's more than a lot of fighters would get, and you get the crack at a big fight too, which is an opportunity in itself. As far as which fight, I don't think the Errol Spence fight happens, even though that to me is the most intriguing, and that's what I love about Errol Spence. Some guys just say stuff and they don't really back it up. Errol Spence said, "No, I'll go up in weight, sure," and I actually think he means it, because I don't think he's a guy who wants to. A lot of guys say, "I'll fight anyone, anywhere." Oh, but no, I don't want to fight on the road, right? Actually, as we like Terence Crawford, but Terence Crawford has already said, or his trainers at least said, "No, we're not going to England to fight Kell Brook." Where Terence Crawford, Errol Spence rather, has already done that and knocked Kell Brook out. And I think that, that says a lot about a guy. The guys who fight on the road, those guys are fearless. And I don't think, Spence has any issues with moving up in weight or doing any of that. So I think Canelo and Andrade is most likely next. And I think that's different for Canelo, because I don't think he's fought a guy who's not a straight up puncher and going to be in front of him in quite a long time. And Andrade, Demetrius Andrade is a guy who we've seen glimpses of brilliance from. But we've also seen sometimes where it's like, this guy just cannot put it all together. He's almost and it's funny because he's about to fight Billy Joe Saunders. He's a weak version of Billy Joe Saunders to me. And I just don't think, where Erislandy Lara obviously put up a close fight, Trout put up a good fight. All these guys are similar styles. I don't think Andrade has he doesn't have the willpower or the skill, I think, the way Trout and Lara have to just make Canelo work for 12 rounds and school him and outbox him and move on his feet and all that, right? But I hope Andre proves me wrong, because we've seen raw talent from him. I know John has been on him. John's been big on him for a really long time. We just haven't seen him put it all together. But sometimes you just need that big fight to do it. And, he's a guy who hasn't had that big fight. But now he's, under DAZN and Eddie Hearn, that makes things a lot easier. So I do think that that's likely going to be next. I can't see them taking on Callum Smith yet. Callum Smith was actually rumored to be going up to light heavyweight. Now he's saying, you know what, I'm going to stick around at 168. He's not waiting on Canelo. But, it'll be interesting to see how Canelo fights a guy like Andrade if he does. Because, we talked about this. I don't think Danny Jacobs did great against Canelo, and he still made it a very close fight. And I don't think, to be honest, either guy looked really good there. So Andrade, a guy who's arguably overlooked, I think, in a lot of ways, just because he hasn't had a marquee victory. He just has that eye. It passes the eye test where we see a lot of talent out of him, but he's never put it together when it kind of matters. But maybe this is the time that it does matter. Maybe this is the fight that is next, and I think that'll be an interesting challenge for Canelo. I think he should be able to win fairly comfortably, because I think he has the power and the size to deal with Andrade. If you guys remember, Andrade was a division lower too. So he's not a big middleweight by any means. It's not like Danny Jacobs who's going to put on 10, 15 pounds overnight. That's not going to be the issue here. Canelo's going to be the bigger guy in the ring, just like he was against Trout, just like he was against Lara. So I think theoretically that could be the next fight to happen for Canelo. I would love to see Spence, but I think that's going to have to wait. So I think what we might see, we might almost see an Andre Ward situation here, because Andre Ward is at 168, and he's like, well, should Golovkin going to go up, or should I move up to 175 for Kovalev? I think that's what we're kind of seeing here for Canelo. Does he eventually move up to fight Callum Smith at 168, or does he try to get Errol Spence to move up and fight at 160? Errol Spence has vocally said he wants that fight, and especially with them running out of options at PBC. I wouldn't be surprised if they try to push for that fight, but it doesn't seem like PBC is really making friends with anyone at this point, so I don't think that fight's going to happen anytime soon. So my money's on Canelo and Andre next.
Okay, Travis, you sound like you wanted to jump in there. Yep.
Yeah, before I have to get off it, but I wanted to stick up for my boy Terrence Crawford real fast. Terrence Crawford went on the road to win his first title against Ricky Burns at 135 pounds, so he's not afraid to go on the road and win either. He's went on the road before. He went over to England to win his first title.
Yeah, but I don't value Burns the same way I value Kell Brook, right? I mean, I get it. He had to do that because, let's face it, at that time, no one knew who Terrence Crawford was, right? Now people do. And I don't think Errol Spence, when he went to fight Kell Brook, it's not like he knew who Errol Spence was. Errol Spence was an accomplished Olympian, was already headlining some fights, his up-and-coming prospect. And guys like Usyk, everyone knows who Usyk is, and yet this guy just constantly goes in people's backyards. I think there's a certain amount of fearlessness that comes with it, and I'm sure some of it's ego and power and saying that, why do I have to travel? I shouldn't need to travel. But I think part of it is, again, Kell Brook is going to sell at 50,000. Burns was not going to sell at 50,000, and it's going to be 50,000 angry Brits. And we've seen repeatedly Brits who fight at home, they're different fighters, right? Carl Froch destroyed Lucien Boutte in England, right? Looked like a different animal. And then we see the complete opposite. We saw Joshua in New York last week. He didn't look like he was all there, right? So I think fighting in England is a different challenge in itself, and I wish more fighters embrace that challenge. And I'm not saying Terrence Crawford doesn't want it. I'm sure his trainer just being like, you know what, I know you want it, but we don't have to do this, right? I'm sure it's a calculated risk. That being said, I just appreciate the guys who say, no, I'm confident of my abilities that I'm going to do this and I'm still going to win. And despite judging and all that, I'm not going to have any problems taking home that dub. That's all I'm saying.
All righty. Travis, you have a good one. Thanks for hanging in there with us.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks a lot.
All right, Travis has to go. I wanted to, John, there are people out there who are warning Anthony Joshua not to fight an immediate rematch with Andy Ruiz, which right now looks like the likely scenario to me. And there are others who think it's a good idea to get right back in there and, show that the loss was a fluke. Which side are you on for this argument?
That is a great question. I wish Travis was here. Just got to remember, we got to ask Travis because I want to hear his opinion on this. I was of the opinion that he should get back in the ring with him, but after I read so much, now I'm thinking that I think it would be smarter if he waited, if he had a tune-up in England, won, then fought Ruiz, because I heard last night that Eddie Hearn said that, to Joshua's credit, he wants to come back to New York and fight Ruiz in New York. Now, that might not be a bad idea, but it all depends on what kind of style Joshua uses. If he's mentally there and he says, okay, obviously my plan for the first fight was not a good one. I need to throw my jab more. I need to keep him on the outside of my punches. I can't go in there recklessly like I did the first time because Ruiz got faster hands than me. If he works on his plan, works on his technique, he's dropping his left all the time, he can win. There is no doubt in my mind that he can win the rematch. But there's also a real good chance he loses that fight. And if he loses that fight, the rematch, his career is in deep trouble. I mean, it's in some trouble now because of the way it is nowadays, but if he loses again. So for me, I would think if I was Eddie Hearn, I would take him back to London and get him a fight at Wembley Stadium or whatever. He wins convincingly, then fight Ruiz. But see, the problem is I understand the logic, but I also wonder if there's emotion thrown in there because, when you have something bad happen in your life, like Joshua, from what I heard last night, he went home to his apartment and nobody even saw him for a whole week. He didn't come out at all. So it's really hitting him what happened now in New York. So I'm just wondering if emotionally and mentally he can get prepared in time because it's not like it's very far. I mean, it's June, right? So we're talking November maybe. That's not a lot of time to get yourself ready for such an important fight. But again, like I said, if you want to get rid of something as fast as possible, you might be willing to roll the dice. So I don't think there's a bad argument here or opinion. I just think it depends on what you think is the smartest way to go. And I'm leaning that direction now. I think a tune-up and then the fight. But it's not going to happen that way, I don't think, from what I understand. And I certainly understand that. Eddie Hearn is a very smart promoter. So yeah, that's my view, but I want to hear what Riz's view on that is for sure.
Yeah, let's get your take on this one also, Riz. What do you think?
I think a tune-up is not really a good idea, to be honest. I think when a tune-up happens, though, I can see it goes both ways. At least with the rematch, you're already amped up, and honestly, sometimes with a tune-up, you're not focusing on that guy. You're focusing on the rematch, and because of that, it's easy to get caught. But we see the other side. I think it's all about style. So usually when there's a stoppage, I think guys bounce back better. Like look at Lewis and Hartman, right? But I think when it's the opposite, when guys you look at Mosley's been the worst with rematches, right? Winky Wright and Vern Forrest, he wanted those fights right away, but it was how he lost. He was getting schooled, right? He was getting outboxed. He was a taller, lankier guy. This situation just unique in so many different ways. We have the guy who was shorter and with less range and didn't have the conditioning, but he had clearly a better skill and he was winning the fight as a boxer more than anything else. So the question is for Joshua, how is he going to overcome that? Because if he's not able to overcome that, he's in deep trouble. And forget the knockouts. The power is one thing, but if he's not able to overcome, his head movement and all those things, then how is he going to win? And I think that's a legitimate question. I think I know they're rivals and all that, but Frank Warren actually had a good quote, and he said, "A phenomenal talent is Anthony Joshua, but still so incredibly raw." And I still haven't seen that the refined skills that he's had as an amateur. And I mean, I wouldn't go that harsh, but he's not wrong in a lot of ways, right? Because if you look at all 4 knockdowns that Ruiz had, they were instant replays. They were the exact same situation. Joshua landed a big shot. He thought he had Ruiz hurt. Ruiz took the shot well, and instead of backing up, stayed in the pocket, waited for Joshua to throw, and he countered and timed and was more crisp and tight with the shots, so he was able to land the better punches, and then as soon as Joshua took the shot, he followed up on it, right? It was just, and that's what happened in the first knockdown. Joshua thought he had him out. He thought he was going to finish the fight. He landed a couple shots. He thought he was over. Ruiz slipped, landed a left hook, right? Second knockdown, Joshua was still a little daisy, so, Ruiz pounced on him. The third knockdown, exact same thing. Huge left hook. Joshua thinks he has him. And then what Ruiz does, steps back, great footwork, slips a couple shots, lands a left hook, hurts him, another right hand, Joshua goes down again. And by that point, the fourth knockdown was already done. My point is, though, a rematch is not going to fix that. It's not going to fix those mistakes. I think, though, that he'll be able to hurt Ruiz, and this time won't rush. This time takes his time. So let's do a total 180 here. If Joshua lands a couple shots there and finishes him, we're not talking about any of this stuff, right? We're not talking about him being overrated. We're not talking about him, focusing on another fight. We're not talking about any of those things, right? And that's where part of this credit has to go to Ruiz. But that being said, this is mentally challenging more than anything else, right? Does he have the discipline to realize he has a fighter hurt, and even though he's a good finisher, he can take time to break him down? That's what we've never seen from Joshua. For both Joshua and Wilder, power has always bailed them out. We've said that from the beginning. They are both phenomenal athletes. They're both, some of the greatest punchers we've ever seen in heavyweight boxing. We never said, even in today's climate at the heavyweight division, we've never said they're the most skilled. And I don't think they are. And I think Ruiz has kind of shown that. We've seen Povetkin had good moments against Joshua, even though he's like 38. We've seen Luis Ortiz, who might be 57 for all we know, have really good moments against Deontay Wilder. We saw Tyson Fury clearly schooling Deontay Wilder and still should have got that W, right? But Joshua and Wilder have always won on power more than anything else. And heart. Don't get me wrong. They both have heart. We've seen that from both of them. But it's skills, right? Skills pay the bills. And I think, it's hard to see, even though Joshua has, don't get me wrong, he's definitely found ways to get better. But I don't think he has that skill set yet, or at least he hasn't developed it yet, and he's going to have to do that to beat Ruiz. I think against Ruiz, he might knock him down, he might finish him, and I think we might forget about this. But I don't think that question is out the door, right? Even though I think in a rematch, most of us would pick Joshua in a rematch, I think, right? It's like he'd still be the heavy favorite and all those things. But that being said, that doesn't mean, this is a hole, right? This is a hole he has to fill, not just for now, but for the rest of his career. And again, there's opportunities to do that. Vladimir Klitschko, they said he was done. Vitaly Klitschko, his brother, told him he should retire after his loss to Brewster, right? They said he gasses out. They said he has no chin, and then he didn't lose for 10 years, right? So there's I'm not saying Joshua can't overcome this, but he's got to learn, and he's got to, Vladimir completely overhauled his style. If you went back and looked against Corey Sanders, he was trading shots with Corey Sanders. Corey Sanders had always had one great punch, that straight up left hand, straight left hand down the pipe. And he didn't master that skill. Klitschko never stayed on the outside in that fight. And the same thing happened here. Joshua never really pumped out that jab and moved, none of those things, right? So this is a breaking point. It's either learn those skills to beat fighters correctly instead of just expecting your power to bail you out, or you're not going to win. And that's what happened. Ruiz can take a hell of a shot, right? That first knockdown knocks out most fighters, right? It takes Ruiz to get back up and to fix that. And I wouldn't be surprised if Ruiz gets knocked down in the second fight either, and maybe gets knocked out. But I also wouldn't be surprised if Ruiz comes back and win again, because he's the better skilled fighter, and I think that's what Joshua has to correct if he's going to have a long career. Otherwise, heavyweights can fall very quickly. Right? Great fighters can fall very quickly, especially guys like heavyweight, because they have the power, but they don't have necessarily the skill. Right? Look at guys like David Price. People thought Price is going to be a very good fighter. This guy got knocked out against Tony Thompson twice. Right? Tony Thompson, an old man, a very old man, but a guy who still has the skill to beat the younger, more raw talent. So Joshua's got to correct those mistakes. Otherwise, you got to forget about a Wilder rematch, because I don't think the rest of his career is going to go as planned.
Okay, one more topic for you guys. I think this is really interesting. Andy Ruiz is kind of disputing that Joshua would be the A side in a rematch. Ruiz holds 3 world title belts right now. Joshua has none. Ruiz is the toast of the boxing world, and Joshua is everybody's whipping boy at the moment. Ruiz says he's now the shot caller, not Joshua. And Ruiz also wants $50 million to fight Joshua in England. John, who sells more tickets in the rematch? Andy Ruiz, if they fought each other in a stadium in Mexico, or Anthony Joshua, if the rematch takes place in England? Who's the A side here, considering everything?
Well, if it's England, it's Joshua, obviously. Joshua could fight you or me, Dennis, and they'd have 80,000 people there. I mean, he's a ticket seller. People love him there. Now, if they go to Mexico, there would be tickets for everybody, but Ruiz would undoubtedly sell out. I like the fact that he's saying this, Ruiz. I like the fact that he's letting them know, hey, look, you're not going to push me around. I won the first fight, but they had a rematch. They have a rematch clause. And I think it might work out in his favor if it happens at Madison Square Garden again. I don't think he has a problem with that at all. So you could say A+ and A-. I still think Joshua is the guy in the sense because he came in undefeated. He had everything to lose. Ruiz didn't really have as much to lose. He pulled off the big upset. He's the toast of boxing, all that. We're still talking about it. We're going to be talking about it in 20 years, 30 years. But Joshua is Joshua, and he was the man there for a while. So I like it because I like the fact that Ruiz is tooting his own horn, and I think it's partly because some of the criticism that he received from guys like Stephen Smith, who is a moronic idiot. Don't mind my bluntness there, and some of the things he said. But it makes the fight just such a ticket seller, no matter where. I mean, I'd love to see the fight in Vegas, but I think the intrigue, this one could really break the bank, just because Ruiz is going to do some commercials, no doubt. He is Rocky-esque in a sense that a lot of people can relate to him. He's a really nice guy, very soft-spoken. He's going to make a mint. So he's in an ideal position as far as that goes, but I think he understands what the reality is, and the old saying, in boxing, well, I gave you your shot, now you got to give me my shot. So there you go. But I like it. It's going to happen whenever it happens. I certainly like what Riz said about getting right back in there, and that was what I said too. The key is can Joshua learn from this defeat and employ a different strategy? If he doesn't, then he's going to lose again. But A side to me, I still think is Anthony Joshua. But Ruiz is right up there. It's like when an actor wins an Oscar, he goes up from being a supporting actor to a leading man. He's not really the leading man there, but it would say starring now, so he's close in my view. But this is great for heavyweights, and this is great for boxing.
As great as this fight would be in a stadium in Mexico, there's no chance, Riz, that this is going to happen in Mexico, is there? Hearn would not let that happen.
Well, I can't see that happening unless the only time I would see something like that happening is if one of them pulls off, some crazy upset or something along those lines, right? But why would I don't know. I just can't see that fight. I just can't see that happening. Like, why would they? They're just giving any leverage they have, which is already, becoming less and less as Joshua fought in New York, and that was a problem, right? And how is he going to deal with everything in Mexico? He already has enough to deal with to try to overcome this, right? It's already in his head. I think that'd be a very stupid idea. I don't think that makes any sense at all. That's what, and you've seen that. How many times have guys tried to have a hometown showcase fight and it's almost went disastrous? Sergio Martinez, I'm trying to remember who we fought. I want to say it was Martin Murray in Argentina. He arguably should have lost that fight. And you could tell that, like, man, there's a lot of attention that he just didn't want. And I don't think they really kind of considered that. And it's funny because guys like Joshua, who already has that fan base, this is why he wanted to stay in England. And you can see why. And like I said, English fighters are completely different. Andy Ruiz came in with no stress. Funny enough, Andy Ruiz, I know part of him wants to fight in Mexico. I think the other part is nothing really affects Andy Ruiz, right? He's already accomplished more than anyone thought he would, right? So this is all just extra. This is just gravy here for him, right? This is just, although he probably would eat that gravy. I think this is all just extra. This is just a bonus for him, right? This is just limelight and everything like that. So I don't think media, none of this stuff is really throw him off, I don't think. But Joshua, that's what happens when guys have so much attention coming from other sources that are not just about boxing, right? It's different, and that's what makes certain fighters special. The guys who are able to, and again, for whatever you think of Mayweather as a person, and with other distractions he's had, it's never affected him in the ring ever. And I think that's not really a skill you see, but it is a skill in some ways to be able to just put away distractions. Usyk, we've kind of seen the same way. And I don't know if Joshua has that yet. I think sometimes, people forget that. It's like, yes, there's sponsors and this, and he's living the life. But there's another guy out there who's not living that life and who's hungry. And I'll make fun of Andy Ruiz one more time. That guy's always hungry, right? And he came into that fight hungry, and he was going to win because he's hungry. And I don't think putting that fight in Mexico would just be a horrible idea for everyone. I just don't see any point of doing something like that, so I really hope they don't. I think Joshua, the best thing for him is to go back, fix his mistakes, come back. And he said he wants to do New York because I think he understands that I don't want people to say that, oh, I had a hometown advantage, that's why. He wants to correct, like Travis was saying about Canelo and Golovkin. Joshua wants to completely correct this wrong and put this blemish behind him. Just like there's certain ways to overcome a loss. Roy Jones did it the best way against Montel Griffin. Paul Williams, if you guys remember, against Carlos Quintana in that rematch. He lost a close fight. How did he end it? First round knockout. And that could very well happen with Joshua Ruiz, but I think he has to do it correctly. And I'm glad. I haven't heard anyone say anything bad about Joshua since then, right? He didn't pout. He said the better man won. He said give him a lot of credit. He's whatever else. And I think he understands. He has to go back, correct his mistakes. And I think they should do it in New York again because no matter where they do it, it's going to sell. That's not a problem. But I think for him to deal with a certain amount of adversity coming back to New York, the scene of the crime, so to speak, would be good for him mentally. Going to Mexico just doesn't make sense. It's just a lot of extra, you know what I mean? Extra stuff to do, extra stress for no reason. It's not like any extra vindication necessarily. Doing it in New York, that gives him the extra vindication that would really put this chapter behind him should he win.
All right. Hey, John, you sound like you might have some final thoughts there. You were trying to jump in there. Is that?
Oh, no, not really. I just was pretty much agreeing with Riz, and it is. We're right on. I think, I agree. I admire. I think if it was me, I would want to go back there. I think that if that's what you want to do as a fighter, you have to in boxing. That's what it's all about. Yeah. You have to go back to the scene of the crime in a sense and fix it if you're going to fix it. He's putting everything on the line, so I admire that. And I was just thinking too that even though Joshua was getting ripped by everybody, he has been a total stand-up guy about the whole thing, and that is something that is very likable about the guy. I mean, I thought he was acting kind of strange during the fight, but he was obviously concussed, and I get that, and he seemed almost too happy after a loss, and then what Eddie Hearn said, but he's a stand-up guy, and he's someone that's hard to pull against. Andy Ruiz is a great story, but you know what we got here are two really top guys and top people, top fighters, and top guys and top men. I really like that.
Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, John J. Responti are our expert analysts. Nobody does it better. John's going to be back in a few minutes to interview Brandon the Cannon Adams about a remarkable life and a career-changing opportunity he's going to have on June 29th when he fights Jermall Charlo. Riz, you have a great week.
Yeah, take care, Riz.
All right, guys, take care.
All right. Hey, have you seen our website? This is the only place you need to go every day to get your daily boxing news. We post the hottest stories and biggest headlines at ringsideboxingshow.com 365 days a year, and if you have not yet discovered this site, you got something to add to your bucket list. Check it out right now, and you will be amazed. ringsideboxingshow.com. Paul McLaughlin, our British correspondent, is warming up in the bullpen, and we'll be back in less than a minute with more of the Ringside Boxing Show, so do not go away.
Oh, boy, is this great!
This show just makes me want to punish somebody.
What are you doing?
Hi, I'm Dennis Taylor, host of the Ringside Boxing Show, where since 2008 we have been continuously sponsored by Garcia Boxing, the first family of the sweet science on California's beautiful Central Coast. Trainers Max and Sam Garcia and ring strategist Dean Familton are regarded among the most knowledgeable in the game. And Kathy Garcia, who manages all Garcia boxing fighters, is renowned for her integrity and career guidance, having taken 2 boxers to #1 world rankings. Together they comprise one of the most respected teams in the sport. Learn more by calling 831-261-3214 or send them an email at garciaboxing25@aol.com.
Hi there, it's Paul McLaughlin with your weekly roundup of everything going on in the UK boxing scene at the moment. Well, Anthony Joshua is taking a massive risk if he jumps straight back into the ring with Andy Ruiz Jr. That's the words of David Price, would you believe? Now, Joshua lost his WBA, WBO and IBF titles in one of the biggest heavyweight upsets in years, after being dropped 4 times and stopped in 7 rounds by Ruiz Jr. at Madison Square Garden last week. The Londoner has triggered a rematch clause in a bid to regain his titles, but fellow heavyweight Price has warned against facing Ruiz Jr. straight away. Now, Price suffered his first defeat in the pro ranks when he was knocked out by Tony Thompson in 2 rounds, and then 5 months later was stopped in 5 by the American southpaw. He says, "If I had my time again, I wouldn't have taken a rematch with Tony Thompson at all, never mind straight away. Certain people around me were advising me not to, but because you're a fighter and you've got your pride, you want to go and put it right straight away. But sometimes you've got to listen to your head rather than your heart." Well, the fallout continues from the Joshua fight, with coach Dave Caldwell saying something was just not right with AJ in the lead-up to the Ruiz fight. Here's what he had to say.
I thought he looked nervous at Wembley when he fought Klitschko, and he came out and the first couple of rounds he was quite cagey, and you could see that the cage and the nerves kind of got to him a little bit. He's only human, you know. We have this thing about heavyweight champion, 6'6", body sculpted, but bottom line is he's human and he has emotions. Me, when he gets in the ring, that's where it's different. That's where he doesn't look like a confident man at all. That's not an aggressive look, and it's not a chilled look. It's not a happy look. So there's the different looks that fighters have. Some go in there smiling, some go quite relaxed. But that's not a relaxed look. It just doesn't look like the heavyweight champion of the world. It doesn't look like a confident guy. It doesn't. It looks like a fighter that's got full of demons in his head there.
Well, the rematch has been signed, and I'm sure something will come out of the woodwork before that happens. Now, on to my favourite UK boxer. In fact, I think he's my favourite boxer. It's Callum Smith. He produced another sensational finish at Madison Square Garden, but with the world title reign well underway, how far can the Liverpool star go? The undefeated WBA Super and Ring Magazine 168 pounds world champion made the first defence of his titles he won last year, dominating and stopping Hassan and Dam within 3 rounds to light up the mecca of boxing. Now, Mundo stamped his authority on proceedings from the get-go, using his size advantage to drop the challenger twice before ending the show with a fearsome right. Victory for Smith came on the back of winning the World Boxing Super Series final last September, emphatically halting George Groves in a fashion which symbolised more than a simple passing down of the guard. And now Callum Smith wants a super fight against Saul Canelo Alvarez at Anfield in September. And what a fight that would be. We spoke to Carl Froch, and he gave us his opinion on how that fight might go down.
You know what, that's potentially a really good fight, Callum Smith-Canelo. I know Canelo Alvarez is a bit of a monster, big puncher, strong. But against Jacobs last week, he's shown that he fades a little bit after round 6, 7, starts to slow down, he doesn't look that comfortable anymore. That's a good fight. I'd pay to watch that, I really would. It's interesting. And I couldn't pick a winner, which may surprise you, but I've sparred with Callum Smith. He's tall, he's rangy, he can punch a bit, he's strong, and he's naturally the bigger guy than Canelo. So Canelo will find it hard to get close to him. So it's an interesting fight.
Right, that's your lot from me, guys. I'll be back next week with some more British boxing news. In the meantime, gloves up and protect yourselves at all times. It's back to the studio.
Thank you, Paul McLaughlin. Great stuff. Good to have you back, my friend. Our featured guest is coming up next, and he's not only fascinating, but he's a whole lot of fun. Stay tuned for Brandon the Cannon Adams, who is 30 seconds away.
I'm Dennis Taylor, co-author of the Amazon bestseller Intimate Warfare, the true story of the Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward boxing trilogy. You know, writing this book was a labor of love for John J. Responti and myself. We enjoyed every minute of the process and considered it a privilege to tell the tale of one of the most electrifying boxing trilogies in the history of this sport. Intimate Warfare traces the collision course of Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward from their earliest days through their 3 epic fights, as well as the aftermath of this great rivalry, which culminated in one of the greatest friendships in boxing. Intimate Warfare has received a 4.5-star rating from readers and was endorsed by Hall of Famers Harold Letterman and Joe Cortez and 2-time Trainer of the Year Virgil Hunter. Our foreword was written by Ray Boom Boom Mancini, another one of the greatest blood and guts fighters of our time. Get your copy today at Amazon.com.
Welcome back to the Ringside Boxing Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm Dennis Taylor with John J. Responti, and today's featured guest is a fighter a whole lot of the country discovered when he won the 2018 season of the Contender, beating Shane Mosley Jr. for the championship. That was last November. On June 29th in Houston, Brandon the Cannon Adams will return to the ring for the first time since, and he's going to do it in a very big way. He'll be taking on undefeated Jermall Charlo for Charlo's WBC interim middleweight crown at NRG Arena in Houston, and you'll see that fight on Showtime. Brandon Adams is 21-2, 13 knockouts, and he's undefeated since 2015. And to find out more about him, I'm going to turn it over right now to my partner, John J. Responti. John, take it away.
All right. Hey, Brandon, it's a pleasure to have you on the Ringside Boxing Show today to talk about this.
Likewise, man.
Yeah, great. You got this great opportunity coming later this month. Thanks. Really appreciate you making some time for us. How are you, and how's your training camp going?
I'm doing good. I feel good. The training camp is going. It's going real good. Freddie Roach, my trainer, Dub Hundy, they both are super excited about this fight for me. Probably just as excited as I am. I can't wait to get in there this June 29th to shock the world.
Yeah, well, as we saw last weekend, right? I mean, nobody is going to underestimate anybody for a while after what happened, right? You saw that with Randy Ruiz and Anthony Joshua, right? Was that a shocker or what?
Yeah, man. After this fight, they're going to call me Brandon Ruiz. I promise you that. You know what I'm saying? we go up for a shocker number 2.
Here it comes, right? Here comes the sequel, huh? Yeah, really. Okay, when you won the Contender, and I watched that show, that was a really interesting. I've actually watched it all the way back when Sylvester Stallone was involved, so that tells you how long I go back. But when you won the Contender last November, you probably, this is what I would have figured. You probably figured it was going to open some doors for you, right? But I'm wondering whether you were surprised that an opportunity like this one would come as quickly as it did. An interim world title shot on Showtime's main event against Jermall Charlo. What was your reaction when you heard this could happen?
My reaction towards being called up to fight Jermall Charlo, I wasn't expecting to be called up by anybody at the time. It started off with Triple G, Gennady Golovkin. They called me up to fight him first, and I was shocked because I was actually going back down to 154. I was going to go back down and fight at that weight until big opportunities was to come back or to actually, come around, I should say. But sure enough, I was offered to fight Triple G, and I don't know if maybe, that offer opened the door for other people to kind of bat their eyes my way, but that, in my opinion, definitely helped the opportunity for me to get my name out, and then everybody else start calling in. So I appreciate it. I appreciate the whole ride.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, Jermall has some pretty big names on his resume. He knocked out Cornelius Bundridge and Julian Williams and Hugo Centeno, and decision to Austin Trout. He's one of the big names. Been around for a while in the middleweight division with Canelo and Golovkin, Daniel Jacobs, etc. But as we said with Andy Ruiz, these kind of things happen with so-called underdogs. What are your impressions of Charlo, and how do you plan to beat him? If you can divulge anything with us.
My impression of Charlo is he's a champion. He's a champion for a reason. He worked hard for the opportunity that he has been given, and he sees his moment. I don't think light of him nor any of the guys that I've ever fought before. So going into this fight, me fighting the Charlo brother, how I feel about it is all I need to do is be me. I have to go up in there and don't beat myself. Fight how I'm used to fighting, fight like how I know I can, and do what my trainers and coaches are asking of, and I believe that will be enough to beat anybody I get in the ring with. I'm strong-willed. I'm very determined. I work hard, and my hard work, I feel like it's paying off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the fight is in Houston, as we said, Charlo's backyard. Are you confident? Because there's this problem with boxing. When you go into another guy's backyard or his home court or whatever you want to say, it's sometimes decisions are, as you know, kind of iffy. Are you confident that you can get a fair shake there if it goes to the scorecards?
To be honest, yeah. As crazy as it might sound, I know what he says he means to boxing, and him bringing the fight to Houston. But I like to feel, it's a big piece of me that feels, I'm not going to even say it's small. It's a big piece of me that feels the reason why these seats are being filled is because he's fighting somebody like me, because he's fighting a name like me, because of the work I put in during the Contender. And me knowing that I'm fighting him in his hometown, that just means I have to be on my A game. I know and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Swift Hurd just fought in his hometown, and you see what just happened there.
Right.
The underdogs this year, we definitely stepping up and we stepping out. And I definitely plan on doing the same thing. I know, like I said, he's a hard worker, but I feel like I can outwork him. Regardless of whatever he do, I feel like I could do, a lot better. That's just me mentally. That's just me speaking upon, my beliefs upon who I am. And I plan on displaying that.
Yeah, interesting. It's interesting you mentioned Hurd. You think it's sometimes harder, Brandon, when you're fighting in your hometown? There's more pressure to perform?
You know what? I think to some degree it does. It does have an effect. It does play a small part in your mind. But I mean, like, and when I say small, I mean every point leading up into a fight is very important. So I mean, like, even though I say it's small, I mean it's not small. It's big. He brought up the fact that, you know, it's a lot of pressure upon him because he's fighting in his hometown. He said, and because of his last fight, how it didn't go the way he wanted it to, or something like that. So, you know, he wants to come out and put a grand performance on for this fight, and that's upon him. You know, if he feel that kind of pressure, for him to want to answer, you know, his critics or whomever it is. I'm not in that position right now, and I know at the end of the Contender, I fought, you know, in the finals and the finale, I fought Shane in my hometown, and I like to think that, you know, it didn't really affect me as long as my loved ones was there, and if they couldn't be there, you know, I knew that they was there with me mentally. So when I go into the fight, man, once the bells sound, I kind of get lost and only focus upon the task at hand. So I can't actually speak for him.
I see. Okay. Yeah, you mentioned you were in the running to fight Triple G. How close did that matchup come to becoming a reality?
You know what? I don't know, because I could say, you know, all they had to do on their end was change a few things as far as, you know, what they were proposing to me for the fight. So I mean, like, I could say it was extremely close, but then again, I could say it was pretty far because, like I said, I fight at 154, but I don't mind fighting guys at 160. I don't. There's great opportunities in either one, you know, so I don't have a whole, you know, a long boxing pedigree. Fighting at 54 or 60, I'm not worried so much of, you know, whatever all the other fighters who've been doing it their whole life been worried of, as far as, like, you know, man, he's so much bigger because he naturally is at 160. That stuff kind of really don't occur to me. Triple G, the offer was, you know, it's to fight at a heavier weight than 160 alone. So, you know, that was way out of pocket to me. When I say it was way out of pocket, I mean, like, that was, you know, that was way too much. That was already out of my element once they approached with a larger number than 160. And then the amount of what they was offering, I just couldn't agree upon that, especially, like, 4 or 5 days later, I was offered by Charlo and his team, you know, an offer that was way greater than that. So then at that point, I was, you know, trying to figure out who do I go after, who do I actually decide to fight this guy for this, even though his name, you know, he's a titan in the boxing, you know, Triple G, his name, he's an international star. You know, do I go tackle this titan, or do I fight this guy who, you know, who's an interim champion that could set me up for bigger and better things? So I kind of had to weigh those options, and as I kept weighing them, honestly, fighting Charlo just kind of made a little more sense, literally and figuratively.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, well, this is cool because this will be Showtime's main event, Brandon, which is a big stage. So do you feel like your experience on the Contender helped prepare you for this opportunity?
Yeah, my experience on the Contender, it definitely plays a part, but like a lot of my experience in life just in general, I have to credit that as well. You know, all the ups and downs that I've been through, that kind of, you know, paved way and kind of grew me up to prepare me, you know, for, you know, my shortcomings and my upcomings and my upbringing. So, you know, everything plays a part with me, and I hold everything kind of dear to me, and that's kind of why I walk the path that I walk, and I believe in the way I do.
Nice. So, how fun was it to be part of the Contender? I mean, I used to interview Andre Ward numerous times, and he's one of the best people that I've ever met. And I was just curious what it was like doing that show, and how much fun did you have? And I mean, the competitiveness is obviously always there because you guys are all trying to do something. But did you enjoy that whole process of filming that show?
Yeah, being on the Contender, the experience I had on the Contender was extremely fun.
Good.
I got brothers now, man. I got guys I could call up on regardless of whatever I'm going through in life. A lot of these guys been through it. If they haven't been through it, they sit and they listen to me, and then, they give me their opinions upon things. I appreciate those guys. Then the cast, all the guys we were working with, from the sound, the video, the people who were editing everything in the back, everybody, they definitely looked out for us. The chefs, I can't speak about the chefs enough. They made sure every piece of watermelon we had in there, like all the fruit was grade A, top of the line. The food was amazing. Everybody there was, honestly, man, they took their time with building the Contender. And I know, we didn't have phones, radios, TVs. The clock on the wall was it was wrong. It was it was tough. It was extremely tough being in that house, but working with the people inside the house, they definitely made everything easy. Working with Andre Ward was crazy. It was something else, man, because Andre Ward, being the host of the show, he can't really show favoritism to both sides, man. But I could honestly say, man, he was trying his best to spread himself apart to both sides, even though he hung in our room a lot more.
Okay. How much did that exposure change the trajectory of your boxing career? I mean, did you get recognized a lot more than you did before? Was the phone ringing a lot more? Here's a funny one. Did your old friends assume that you suddenly got a boatload of money? I mean, what happened after you won that thing?
After I won the Contender, no, people don't recognize me. They assume that I'm a lot taller, so they don't really associate me with the person who they saw on TV. The only way sometimes they recognize me is if I'm smiling, to be honest. Honestly, that's the only way people recognize. They're like, hey, you were the guy on the Contender, if they see me smiling. Like, so if I'm not smiling, I'm not that guy, unfortunately. And yeah, a lot of people think that, I got Floyd Mayweather money, or I'm very close to it, and that's a huge negative. I'm not nowhere near that. I'm definitely in the building blocks of all of it. So I appreciate you guys asking that question, and I'm me answering out loud. Like, yo, give me a break. If I keep winning, the sky's the limit. But sheesh, I'm not there just yet.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad you got to tell them. Yeah, people who saw the Contender might already know a little bit about your life story, but man, it deserves repeating. You grew up in the Watts section of Los Angeles, which is obviously a very rough place to be a kid. I read that street fighting was so commonplace there that the adults in the community bought boxing gloves for all the kids just to try to minimize the damage. Is that a true story? Is that how a lot of neighborhood abuse got?
Well, I can't say every neighborhood. I know it was ours. The adults over there, they thought it was funny to see us. They like to watch us play sports, though. I'm not going to just say it was just for boxing, but I knew every summer they used to put boxing gloves out there and see what kid thought they was the toughest. And I didn't do it because I wanted to be the toughest. I just liked to box when I was a little kid. So I didn't, it wasn't, like traditional boxing. Or we was out there street fighting with boxing gloves on, nobody biting and kicking, but, we was out there street fighting with boxing gloves, and I liked it. I enjoyed it. My number one sport was football. So, also in the summer, once we finished boxing, if we didn't have headaches from that, if we wasn't concussed from boxing, we go out there and throw up tackle and play football.
Yep. So you said you liked boxing. What was it about? What was it about? You were just a little guy. What was it about it you liked so much?
The story is of Mike Tyson, honestly. I knew how little I was growing up, and I've always had dreams of being 6'6" and 7 foot, but, as I started getting older, I started to recognize, I was a whole lot shorter. But Mike Tyson. I used to hear stories about how Mike Tyson was short and everybody respected him. He was the baddest man in the world once upon a time. Something still close to it, you know what I'm saying, if you make him angry enough. So Mike Tyson, the stories of Mike Tyson definitely played a real big part in why I was interested in boxing. You know, just hearing the stories of how, you know, he was fighting against, you know, guys who towered over him and what he was doing and, you know, how he was, you know, a badass just in general.
Yeah. This is the Ringside Boxing Show. I'm John Jay, responding with Dennis Taylor, and today we're talking to the Contender winner, Brandon Adams, who fights Jermall Charlo June 29 in Houston, Texas, for the interim WBC middleweight title. Brandon, how did you avoid some of the pitfalls that affected your neighborhood, namely gangs and drugs? How'd you stay away from that?
I was able to avoid all of the neighborhood nonsense, honestly, by I was brought up looking at people make mistakes and me having my mom. My mom really is the reason why. I never wanted, like, she made sure she tapped our butts every time we did anything. If we looked like we was going to do something bad, she'd whoop our butts. And I didn't like whoopings growing up. Whoopings hurt. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't necessarily just belts, you know what I'm saying? But that's a whole different story. So I always learn from other people's mistakes. I watched what they did, and I said to myself, shit, I'd be damned if I did that, because I know if I did that, not only will I get in trouble, you know, with that, I got to go back home to my mom's, and she don't play. So that, like, the fear of, you know, God was put in me through my mom, and that really was a huge reason why I never really did anything crazy growing up. I mean, like, I was bad, but I was only bad to a point to where, you know, I didn't want to get in trouble, so I had to be real sneaky, and I was able to get away with a couple of things. I wasn't ever really a bad kid, but I got away with enough stuff to also recognize, you know, that my mama didn't play, so I would never jump overboard.
Boy, thank God for Mom. Yeah, your Wikipedia biography says that you clearly saw your older brother get shot and some of your best friends get killed. Is that true?
Yeah, it comes, that story's true. It comes with the territory of staying in the neighborhood, man, and when we stay in a community, you know, unfortunately, we see these kind of things. I was a little kid. My brother got shot like 2 centimeters away from his heart, and I remember my mom frantically trying to figure out what to do to help stop the blood. She was worried. She thought she was about to lose her kid. She's in the back. She's trying to she's trying to mash up antibiotics and painkillers and stuff because she didn't know which part of him was bleeding and where the gunshot was. And she asked me to put the towel on my brother's chest and put pressure. Don't hold it too hard. And I remember I held the towel against his chest, and he just stared at me. He didn't say nothing. He just stared at me. And look, and I'm just watching all this blood come out his chest, worried. You know what I'm saying? My brother's still alive. Thank God he's all right. His life changed. He, you know, whatever he was doing before, he definitely cleared that up. You know, he's not involved in the streets. He's a happy father now. So, you know, thank God for that. And then losing a lot of my friends in the neighborhood, like I said, man, that's the beast we live by in the streets, unfortunately. And a lot of these brothers didn't gangbang. A lot of them was just, you know, bad timing. They was outside. They was in the way of somebody who had anger on their hearts, you know, and in their mind, and it reflected on their actions. And now, you know, a lot of these dudes are reflecting upon that for the rest of their life in jail. It's unfortunate, but yeah, you know, the stories that you've heard are true, and that's also another big reason why I box, man. Is because I like to tell people where I come from and what I've been through to kind of shake people up and make them feel and believe that they can actually, you know, if they think positive or if they, you know, they ground themselves, they can get out of whatever situation that they in, or they could just do a whole lot better than what they're doing at that particular moment.
Yeah, that's great stuff, Brandon. So tell our audiences about Big Al and how he affected your life.
Big Al's the guy who got me involved in boxing. Big Al, he meant a whole lot to me. He passed away, but he's the guy who brought me to the boxing gym. He's the guy who introduced me to Broadway Boxing Gym. That's my home gym. That's where I got started. He took the time out of his life to take me, to wake me up. Well, I woke up, but he gave me a ride every day to the gym, and tried to instill, because he knew I didn't have no real guidance or father figure, and he, without him meaning to do that or be that for me, he stepped up and he did that. Big Al.
No. That's really good. It's a good story. And then you met legendary boxing trainer Dub Huntley, who is in the National Boxing
The moderator
Hall of
has
Fame.
left the conference.
What impact did a guy like Dub have on you?
When I first met Dub, he seemed like an old grumpy man. Everybody know him for smiling and always having a good time. But when I met Dub, he didn't seem like he was, as happy as everybody always made him out to be. He was serious about boxing. This is his love, his passion. So when I used to come into the boxing gym, he only used to train all the professional fighters, and he didn't really deal with amateurs. And I was an amateur that just started coming into a boxing gym. So, he never really looked my way, or at least that's what I've always thought. But his head is always up on a swivel. He's always looking at everybody. And one of his, greatest sayings is, he learning something every day, whether it's do or don't, whether it's good or bad. He learning every day, so that's why he's always watching. He's always, he keeps his head on the swivel to see if people are doing what he was trained, to look at, as far as seeing good fighters, qualities and stuff. So Dub, he was definitely, he was the boxing part of my whole career. Once I got involved with him, that's when, I started learning how to box.
I see. So you didn't really start training, according to our research, until you were like 19, and you had your first amateur fight at 20, and then you turned pro at 21. I mean, that's boom, boom, boom. That's the fast lane for sure. But Dub thought you were ready. Why do you think he felt that way? I mean, that's really fast. Why do you think he felt like, boom, you're ready?
You know what? Up to this day, I still don't know. It must have been a whole lot of stuff that he seen me doing, that he saw. He saw a lot of potential in me. It wasn't just him. It was a lot of people telling me that they seen a lot of potential in me, that, that I was fast, I was athletic, that I was strong. But it was a lot of stuff that I didn't see. So, when they used to tell me, anything that they saw great in me, I used to always question it, I didn't kind of believe them, because I thought it was way too early. And then I used to compare myself to the professionals that I saw on TV that I used to watch at the time. And I used to, and I grade myself real hard. Up to this day, I still do. I'm my biggest and worst critic, of course, so it was hard for me to see what everybody else saw. So, but I did believe in Dub. I believed in everything he said. So, at that point, I was basically just walking by faith and not by sight, because I didn't see what they saw.
Interesting. Yeah, we talked about Golovkin, Triple G, a few minutes ago, a couple times, and you've actually sparred with him, correct? And tell me what that was like.
Yeah.
Your bio also says that you also sparred with Sean Porter and Antonio Margarito. How much do you think, I mean, I've asked fighters this question, and you can't help but get better when you spar with guys like that. I mean, it obviously helped you, right? I mean, to grow from exposure to sparring with those guys.
Yeah, so Antonio Margarito, I sparred him when I was an amateur. Like, it was after my second amateur fight. I wasn't meant to actually spar him, but one of the sparring partners that we went up there with got hurt. He got hurt, so then they was like, well, hey, could you give us some rounds? And then they offered to pay me. And I was, I was 19, and then they threw $300 at me per round or something like that. And I just got involved in boxing. I didn't even know people used to get, people were paid to spar guys. So at this particular moment, I was like, hell yeah, I'm going to try to, I'm going to just survive.
Yeah.
I know how to grab and run. I'm going to survive for about 2 rounds and get the hell out of here before this guy kick my butt like he's whooping everybody else's butt. And me and him sparred. That was the last time we also sparred. I don't know what happened, but he got hurt somehow. My hand hit his head too hard or something like that. But all joking aside, I wasn't the style that they were looking for, or nor that they needed. They just needed an extra body to be put in front of him. But I was extremely nervous. I was a nervous wreck. So when we fought, with sparring, I kind of approached it as if it was a fight. And I wanted to win on points, and it definitely kind of looked that way, and it worked for me. So that's what it was like, yeah, thank you, but we don't need you ever again. Sparring with Triple G was actually after my second professional fight. And sparring with him, I learned a whole lot about myself, and also, I learned who he was after we sparred. And Triple G's a great guy. He smiles a lot, not just because cameras are around. Dude is actually a sweetheart, a great guy. But he also gave me a lot to learn inside and out the ring as well. He was very friendly to me, very open with me, and sparring him. Again, this was another case scenario where he was fighting a guy who was 6 foot. And I'm everything but 6 foot. I was at the time like 5'6" or 5'7". But, because I was athletic in my pros, I was able to go in there and help and move around with them. They kept me around for 3 weeks. Well, at least until the end of the sparring, the end of the sparring before he fought. And I was, by far, I tell everybody the story, and it's the honest to God truth. He hit me harder than anybody ever hit me. Well, I think that, it was because I was very inexperienced at the time, and everybody used to hit hard to me back when, but it was a difference in the way he punched. And so I never stood there and just let him keep crashing shots upon me, of course not. But whenever he was able to land shots upon me, when I would sit there on the ropes and allow myself to get hit, he definitely showed me that I should be, moving my feet.
I see. Okay.
You're listening to the Ringside Boxing Show. I'm John Jay, responding with Dennis Taylor, and today's featured guest is the Contender winner, Brandon Adams. Speaking of the Contender, before you were part of the Contender, Brandon, you fought in an ESPN's tournament, and you made it to the finals, but some circumstances put you in a situation where you had to lose, and this is incredible to me, 12 pounds in 2 days to make weight for that fight. Tell our audience that story.
Yeah, it's one of the stories I hate to actually tell because there was a dispute between me and the guy who was acting as my manager, and it also involved a promotion. And I was looking for help. I was looking for guidance, and the guy who was acting as my manager, I found out he actually wasn't my manager, and I was pissed about that. And the guy, the promotion that pretty much selected him to be my manager at the time, told me, well, look, you take care of that, you handle that, and you don't worry about the fight. You focus and handle up on that. If you don't, then, I'm not going to allow you to be going through litigation and trying to fight. So, basically, he was telling me he was pulling me off the card. A day right before the weigh-in, Artie's called. He called me and asked me how am I doing. Art Paluto from Banner Promotions, he called me like, hey, man, you ready for this fight? And I tell him, like, no, I'm not ready, man. I'm not fighting. He like hell you are, So then basically I get back word that I'm fighting, and if I don't fight, it wasn't from Artie. Artie was just like, no, man, you're fighting. You're on the card. You better, Brandon, you got the biggest fight of your career right coming up. You better be ready. So I kind of knew what that meant. And then the other side, they kind of didn't want to have, they wasn't answering my calls or anything. So I knew what that meant at that point. That meant that, I had to put on my big man pants and try to make it happen. And I did. I went to go make it happen. I went to go see the Dr. Gluckman here in San Pedro. I went to go see him. I gave blood. I did all the tests that I was supposed to do to go see a doctor. And from that point forward, I went to try to start losing the weight. And I didn't know how to do it properly at all. So it destroyed me leading up into the fight. I didn't even make weight for the fight. I was still a few ounces over. It cost me because it was only a shell of myself when I fought John Thompson, and John Thompson did what he was supposed to do, and he won. He won that fight, and after that fight, you didn't hear from me or about me until 3 years later,
Yeah, exactly. So you were gone for 3 years, you said. That was obviously very emotional for you to lose that fight, right? But from what I read in our research, your wife helped you out a lot, and you've got two little children that are just great and everything. But you were gone for a long time. Did it take that long to get yourself back, or did you just want to take a break, rethink, or what was going on there in those years?
Pretty simple, man. I was calling people trying to get back up in the ring to fight, and my calls just wasn't being returned. At that moment, at that point, man, I was shelled. That's regardless of, however the hell it was presented, I wasn't being called for no fights, and I was looking to fight. I was very eager to show, that was only a shell of me, but, I don't know how it goes, man. I'm not a promoter. I was just a guy who was a fighter who was looking for a fight, who was looking to provide for my family, man, and I wasn't getting the call back.
Yeah, well, it happens too much. That happens too much in boxing, unfortunately. From what we read, yes, it's tragic. From what we read, you have a third child on the way. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yep.
Congratulations.
The third kid is in the oven.
Well, that's super. Congratulations for that.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so you're a husband and a father of three. How much motivation does that provide as you get ready to fight Jermall Charlo on June 29th?
It definitely plays a part. My kids think I'm a superhero the night of the fight. They think I'm the good guy fighting against the bad guys. I explained to, my kids that, that the guys I fight aren't bad guys, but that's how they associate it. That's how they go about it. So I know, and they look up to superheroes. So I know they, it means a whole lot to know, what kind of, like the effect that I have on my kids, because that's something I was yearning and looking for my whole life. I was looking for that figure. And I didn't have it, so I always told myself that I wanted to do that towards my kids. And so far I am.
Yes, indeed. Okay, last question for you. Finally, you have a little brother, Terrell Adams, right? He's an amateur boxer right now. So what kind of potential? What kind of potential does he have, Brenda?
Man, the sky's the limit. He's athletic. He's good looking. He's charming as well. He's taller than me. I think he can go as far as he wants to go. As long as he believes in himself, the same way, the same things that I believe in, that I've believed in to help get me going. I would like to think he got that same, he got that same grit and determination in him. All he got to do is put forth the effort into showing it, showcasing it the night that he's called up, whenever he decides to turn pro, and the world's going to know him too.
Yes. Wow.
Hey, man, that outstanding interview, guys. Just loved it. Brandon Adams won Season 5 of The Contender in November, and right now, on the heels of that, he's preparing for what could be a life-changing opportunity, June 29th, when he fights undefeated Jermall Charlo for the WBC's interim world middleweight championship. You will see that fight on Showtime, where it will be the main event of a triple header. Brandon, man, thanks for coming on today, and best of luck, Charlo. Seize the day, young man. We're rooting for you.
Thank you guys. Thank you guys for having me, man. I appreciate that. And who knows, man, the next time we interview, for sure, you know what I'm saying, you guys will be talking to the news.
Oh, yeah, we'll be pulling for it, Brandon.
Brandon Ruiz.
Right, thank you, guys.
Brandon Ruiz.
That's it. That's it. Brandon Ruiz.
All right, thanks, Brandon. Hey, do you guys like this podcast? Do us a solid and post the Ringside Boxing Show on your social media outlets and help us grow. Also, if you have not discovered the top website in the whole world for daily boxing news, you got something to do right this minute, something to add to your bucket list. We update ringsideboxingshow.com with the hottest stories and biggest headlines every single day, 365 days a year. Check it out right now, and you will be amazed. I guarantee it. ringsideboxingshow.com. We want to thank our expert analysts, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, and my partner here, John J. Responti, for their weekly contributions to this show, along with our outstanding British correspondent, Paul McLaughlin. And, of course, thanks to you, Ringside Nation, for being a part of our worldwide audience again today. Keep your chin tucked, and we'll talk to you again next week on the Ringside Boxing Show.
Well, it's a great day for me to whoop somebody's ass. It's a bad day, so you better get off of my back. You might get cold cocked if you cross my path. It's a great day